Okay, so it's September, school is starting really soon, so I thought that, I did this last time, but I'm going to go through every single movie that I watched in the month of August. I watched one TV show, but only 5 episodes, and I want to kind of talk about that when I actually finish it. So this is going to be every single movie that I watched in the month of July. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you're going to probably know a lot of this stuff, but if you don't, then here are just my thoughts on some things. On the first, I watched Following. This is Christopher Nolan's first movie that had a very small budget, and you can definitely tell that, but you can also see a lot of his tropes of Christopher Nolan coming out in this movie that he later had to expand upon. But here, this movie's fine. It's solid. It doesn't really do anything revolutionary, but I had a solid time. It was fun. I do think there are some pacing issues, but yeah, whatever. On the second, I rewatched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This movie is still fire. It's one of the best movies in the MCU, in my opinion, and it's just a really good conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I enjoyed it even more than when I first watched it. Then I took a 3-day break, and then I watched Tetris. This movie is just whatever. I don't really remember it. I made a review, but since then, I kind of soured on it a bit more. I just don't remember a lot of the stuff, but the I Need a Hero needle drop was really good, but yeah, the rest of it kind of lackluster. On the 6th, I rewatched Oppenheimer. You guys know how much I love this movie. This is one of Christopher Nolan's best, in my opinion. This is arguably Christopher Nolan's magnum opus. Every performance, every shot, the cinematography. Ludwig Göransson's score is incredible. This movie is just amazing, and yeah, I can watch it again. It's kind of weird, but I can watch this movie any day of the week, which is really weird because this movie is depressing and dark. But I don't know, I just want to get more of it because I'm so immersed in the experience every single time. On the 8th, I watched The Wandering Earth 2, the sequel to The Wandering Earth, which I don't really like that movie that much, and this one is kind of the same. I think it's a little better than the first, but I don't love it. It's just kind of forgettable. The movie's 3 hours, it doesn't need to be 3 hours, and I felt like I didn't care about the characters, and I just felt like I was watching the movie. I think the cinematography is amazing, the score is amazing, but the movie, I'm not all crazy about. On the 9th, I watched the worst movie ever made, The Little Panda Fighter. This movie is my least favorite movie of all time. I made a Letterboxd review just bullet pointing 1% of my flaws with it because there's nothing good about this movie. Literally nothing good. The animation is horrendous. It's tragic. This movie is offensive, and it's offensive to movies. It's offensive to people, and it's offensive to many other things, and I couldn't watch the movie, to be honest. On the 10th, I watched Chicken Little. This all seems ridiculous, but I was doing kind of a bad animated movies binge, and Chicken Little, it's also not very good. It's a really bad script. The idea is dumb. They execute on that idea not in a good way, and I don't even remember half the things that happen in this movie. Then on the 11th, I watched Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, continuing that bad animated movies binge, and like Chicken Little, the script here is just so bad. It's so generic. It pulls from so many movies that we've seen before. It was so cringe just watching it. I had a really bad time watching this. On that same night, though, I watched Batman Begins again. That movie is still amazing. I still think it's incredible. I can rewatch it any day of the week. It's such a great origin for Batman, and I just love that movie. Then on the 12th, I watched Shark Tale. All these animated movies, these bad animated movies. Yeah, Shark Tale, again, I don't really remember half the things that happen in this movie. This movie is just really, really boring. I didn't care about anything going on. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the sharks, and the script is terrible. That same day, I watched Despicable Me. This movie's actually pretty solid. I mean, it's not anything revolutionary. I don't think it's really good. I just think it's whatever. Then on the 14th, I watched Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is still my favorite movie of the year. I think the animation is spectacular. I think it still has the best animation I've ever seen in a movie. The characters are amazing. The story is incredible. This time, it was the best out of all 3 times I've watched it. Yeah, this movie freaking rocks. It's amazing. 5 stars. Then on the 17th, I watched The Banshees of Inisherin. This movie was awesome. I really cared about the characters. I thought it was really interesting. I thought Inisherin was amazingly lit, and the cinematography was incredible. The characters were super interesting, and I really cared about everything going on. Yeah, the movie's awesome. 4 stars. Then on the 19th, I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This movie, it was so boring. I didn't care about a single thing. A recurring trend in this thing, but I didn't care about anything. The characters, the teenagers, they didn't feel like teenagers, and everything felt like it was just such a cop-out of other movies that we've seen like this before, and it was so boring. I didn't care for anything. 1.5 stars. That same day, I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. A lot of people like this movie more than the first. Even people that don't like the first, they're like, oh yeah, this is such a huge improvement. what? If anything, this movie's worse than the first. It's super generic. I still don't care about the characters. They still don't feel like teens. The CGI here is terrible. I was really bored throughout this entire thing. Both of these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies I did not like. Bad start to this binge of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies, preparing for watching the new one. And then on the 20th, I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990. This movie I didn't really care for, but it was a lot better than the two previous ones. I know this came out before them. It's just like whatever. I don't really care about it, but at least the teenagers felt like teens. On the 20th, I watched Marmaduke. This is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. I hated it. I hated it so much. I don't even want to talk about it. Half a star. Then on the 21st, I watched Elemental. I actually like Elemental. I think it was pretty good. It's definitely not classic Pixar, but I really like the animation. It's had a really unique style to it. I thought that the emotional beats worked really well towards the end. It's definitely very predictable towards the end, but I had a good time. 3.5 stars. On the 22nd, I watched Suzume. I actually really like Suzume. I haven't seen many animes, but the animation was amazing, and the story was really gripping and enticing, and I did not expect to like this movie that much. I was expecting it to be just like a whatever movie that I would just throw on and forget about. It's actually sticking with me a lot, and I didn't expect for this to be that good. I actually really liked it. That same day, I watched 65, the new movie with Adam Driver and dinosaurs, and I would consider this movie to be a waste of dinosaurs because I didn't care about a single thing. They stretch out this journey to take up the entire runtime, which felt like it was 10 hours, even though it's like an hour and 46 minutes or something. And it was so boring. I didn't care about the characters. I thought the dinosaurs looked bad. And the story was simple, and what they did with that simplicity is stretch it out to the entire runtime, and it just felt so boring and stretched out. And yeah, I didn't like that one. The next day, I watched Blue Beetle. This movie was actually solid. I wasn't expecting it to be that good based on the pretty average trailer that they played in front of everyone, but it was actually pretty solid. I mean, it's not sticking with me much, but I thought that it was fun. Joel Maraduena is great as Blue Beetle and Jaime Reyes, and I felt like he understood the character, and I really enjoyed the family aspect. The villains are terrible, and they wasted Susan Sarandon, but yeah, the movie overall, it's solid. It's not super memorable, but it was solid. Also, I went to the dine-in theater for the first time with that movie. Oh my god, the seats were so incredible. I can't believe I haven't went to dine-in theaters. Man, it was awesome. I came home from the theater. I was too lazy to make my review, so I made it the next day, and I watched Shrek 2, and that movie was actually better than the first. It was really good. They introduced Puss in Boots, and he was a huge standout. And Shrek and Donkey's back and forth was still one of the best aspects of the entire film. I really liked it. The animation is still really unique and creative. 4 stars. Then on the 24th, I watched Despicable Me 2. This movie was fine. It's not as good as the first. I wrote in my Letterboxd review that I liked it more than the first. That was just recency bias. I think it's a solid movie. It's just doesn't have that same heart that the first had, and the Minions were a lot more annoying this time around, but I still like Groot as a character, and I still like the humor, so yeah, 3 stars. That same day, I rewatched The Flash. This movie was not nearly as good as it was the first time, but I still liked it, kinda. I started to really notice the CGI a lot more and how it was actually really bad, but I think I like it more than a lot of people. I think Barry's journey throughout the film is actually really good and really emotional, and I think a lot of the humor actually does work, but it was a lot duller than it was last time. But still, I actually kind of like it. 3 stars, don't judge me. On the 25th, I watched Sausage Party. This movie is, again, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. There's a lot of movies like that I watched this month. But yeah, Sausage Party, this movie was terrible. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, like I said, and I didn't care about anything. I was so bored throughout the entire runtime. The script sucks. The direction sucks. I couldn't stand this movie. It was so hard for me to finish it. Man, this movie is awful. On the 26th, I rewatched Guardians of the Galaxy. Don't have much to say about this one. It's super funny still. I love the characters. I love their back and forth. Still the best Guardians movie. Still a top 3 movie in the MCU. Still, it's so good. And the last movie I watched was on August 30th. I rewatched The Last Jedi, and I really realized how bad this movie is. I promise I'm not trying to offend hardcore fans of this movie, but I just really don't like it. It's really boring. I don't like what they did with Luke as a character. I think the script was really mediocre in comparison to The Force Awakens, and a lot of things don't make sense, and it's just like there's a lot of like continuity issues between this, The Force Awakens, and Rise of Skywalker, and I really do not care for this movie at all. I've already watched a couple movies this month, so stay tuned for my video next month talking about the movies that I watched in the month of September. But yeah, those are the movies that I watched in August. I'm gonna go eat lunch now. Bye.